Travis Oglesby with us, and Travis is in the Southeast market as well. So I'm starting to meet quite a few people in this area now that I've moved out to the Southeast, and they all have one thing in common. They're all just super cool guys that I want to get to know better. And so fortunately, I have the podcast. He was asking before the show why I do the podcast, and I don't necessarily have a great answer for that, but I do always say that I really enjoy just having people on, getting to know their story a little bit better. And so anyways, Travis, we are excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, man. Pumped to be here, BJ. Thanks for having me.
Hey, and did I say your last name right? I'm always nervous if I say that wrong.
It's all good, dude. It'd be more fun if you said it wrong, but it's Travis
Okay.
Oglesby. So
Okay,
yeah,
good.
you're good.
Yeah, it's funny. People are always like, they get so intimidated when they see my last name, Gremillion. They're like, and dude, they butcher it. Like, I mean, hard. I'm like, man, really? Is it that hard? I mean, but I could be wrong because obviously, I've been this for as long as I have been alive. But it always cracks me up when they just completely like Gremlin. I'm like, really? Just
Mr.
sound
G.
it out. Yeah.
Mr. G.
All right. Gremillion, but whatever. Although I will say this is a tangent, and I'm meeting more people in the Southeast, like I mentioned. And so my ancestors are all like Louisiana. And I haven't been to Louisiana yet. I do want to get out there, but I guess a lot of them now, like I'll say my last name. They're like, wait a minute. How did you pronounce that? Gremillion? And I'm like, yeah, Gremillion. They're like, oh, well, in like Louisiana, that would be like Gremillion and it's like, it's like a French, like
is that
Cajun,
a twang or a French? So
yeah, like a French twang, right? So I don't even know how they even pronounce it. I'm still like a little nervous to even say how they pronounce it. But I've had multiple people out here be like, oh yeah, Gremillion, like I know that name. And everyone in the West was like, I've never heard that. And neither have I. So
my kids still call us Ogsgaby. Like my son and daughter, they'll say Ogsgaby. And it's like, he's almost 5. So I'm like, you got to start getting it right before too long, buddy. But we'll ride with that for now.
I love it. Oh man. Kids are the best. Well, by the way, how many kids do you have?
2. I got a 3 and a 4-year-old little girl.
Oh man, that's awesome. Good for you guys. So you've been married for how long?
6 years.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on. And you're living right now where?
Yeah. So the business is based out. So Tabby's Properties is based out of the Southeast. And so that's our single family company. And the team lives there, and the team runs the company at this point. I just kind of take care of the money, the problems, and try to get ran over by the bus so they don't have to. But we live in Southern Illinois, and it's not even a town, man. It's literally a village of like 200 people. We live on 20 acres here. I got 180 down the road. We're just hunters, fishermen. I took my boy turkey hunting this morning, and I missed one. I missed a freaking turkey. But
with a bow or what?
Nah, it was with a shotgun. I wouldn't have taken the shot unless he was with me. But he was like, "Dad, shoot!" And I was like, "It's too far." So I still shot. So
that's why. So you have wild turkeys just anywhere on your property,
man.
Just
it was
random.
Probably 100. I know you don't play golf, but it's probably 150 yards from where I'm sitting right now is where my blind is and where we missed them at. So yeah.
That's so. If you ever see something that you're like, oh, that looks tasty, you just go out there and take a shot, huh?
Yeah, you could probably get away with about most things out here. Yeah, you could.
Oh, I love that. See, that's how it's supposed to be, right there. Just like, nah, why not? Yeah. That's funny because I remember when we reached out on Facebook and I saw your profile and I was like, man, they look like they have a good time. Like you could tell, you lived on land. And what else do you guys do out there for fun? I mean, there's only 200 people, so I'm sure you got to make your own.
Well, we both grew up here. So, I mean, you do a lot of four-wheeler riding, a lot of cruising, a lot of side-by-sides, and we play a lot of golf. And so,
do you really?
Yeah. Still play competitive basketball. I'm 35 now, so that is not that easy. Everybody's still 20, and I'm 35, so that's not too helpful anymore. But it's the only life I want to live, man. That's for sure. We've bounced around the whole U.S. from L.A. to Georgia from starting these companies, and I had several companies before Tabby's Properties. They say like 9 out of 10 businesses fail. right? So
Mhm.
start 10. And I think I hit that number. I might have hit like 15 till one finally really
That
clicked.
is awesome. Oh man. What other companies did you try?
Dude, I don't even want to tell you. We have
You have to name names.
anywhere from inventing. We had relocation companies that sucked. We had duck decoys and goose decoys that I was trying to like defy the law of gravity with push and pull. I don't know why we tried that, and just multiple other like inventions during college that quickly fell on their face. But
Wow.
it didn't do me half bad. It kind of got us here to this point, I think.
Yeah.
It was pretty embarrassing along the way.
But I love that though. You just kind of like fumbled through until you stumbled on something that clicked, and I think yeah, we've got the same mindset for sure there because yeah, it seems like the fails are definitely a lot more than the wins, especially yeah. I was listening to Alex Hormozy. I listen to a lot of his content because I just feel like it's nice to hear someone that's just he'll shoot you straight. And I'm sure a lot of people that listen to this show know that I've obviously been listening to him, and kind of I use him as like
Yeah,
my motivator.
yeah.
But anyways, he was saying the other day, and I don't know if this is motivating or not, but he was like, look, you're going to go through hell when you are at that stage of like $1 to $2 million revenue in a
Mm-hmm.
company. He's like, that is the absolute worst place to be in. That is like the definition of hell because you don't have enough money for the marketing that you need to spend. You can't hire people. You're doing everyone's jobs.
Yeah,
You're working, crazy amount of hours. And he's like, it's just hard. And
yeah,
as soon as you can like get through that and you can push through and you start actually, getting enough revenue to hire it out and all that kind of stuff, then, it gets fun. But yeah, when you're starting off a business, as you can, I'm sure attest, that's like, it's not fun.
Did
So,
you read his
but I
book,
am,
100? Did you read his book, $100 million?
yes,
What $100 million
both of
leads?
them.
Right. I
Yeah.
just finished that
Offers.
one.
And did you?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he's such a good, I don't know, he just speaks to me because he's just he boils things down to like a very basic, level. He makes it sound, I guess, easy, right? Which we all know it's not. It's
yeah,
nothing near as easy as what he makes it sound. Maybe
yeah.
it is for him though. He's probably like,
Eh,
you guys are all
you know,
idiots, but
yeah. It's all
um,
relevant to where we're at, right? Like different
totally.
challenges. Like your problems are different than my problems. Like everybody on the podcast, right? It's like we all have a different like experience and problem. I will tell you though, reading that $100 million leads book, I increased my ad spend 50% because of it. And
Really?
because at the very end and the conclusion, he talked about like most of us underestimate like, hey, excuse me, go talk to 100 people and you'll get a deal, right? And they come back 30 days later and they're like, hey, I talked to 100 people, and he's like, I meant 100 a day. And we just sometimes underestimate like how many leads it actually takes to get to either the real estate buy, the turnkey acquisition, the whatever it might whatever, right? Whether it's real estate or a product or a t-shirt or whatever. It's like sometimes we underestimate it. And so we're really trying to like grow and scale the company in a different way this year
Mm.
through its paying off debt and it's a hiring at this point. And it's been 8 years to get here to this point, and I really enjoyed what he said about like you have to do so much more than what you even think you have to.
Mm.
So, and that just really hit home because I was like, okay, I got to quit being a baby about interviewing. I got to be willing to interview 20, 30 people instead of five and find someone. So
Man, I love that. Yeah, get more reps in. That's really what it comes down to is and you're right. Like that's interesting because he boils it down to look, it's just a numbers game. Like if you're gonna for every dollar you spend, you should be making, I think he's making 7 or 8 for every dollar that he spends. And
yeah,
it's not linear necessarily, but it really could be like, as long as you hire it out and those kind of things and
mm-hmm.
scale with it. But yeah, no, that's a great point. Cause yeah, I think a lot of us are nervous to spend the marketing dollars because especially in real estate, it doesn't happen right away. Like to realize that money, it could take 3, 4, 5 months, so you're fronting
Mm-hmm.
a lot of money in the hopes that you're going to obviously get some of that back. But that's
I
interesting. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, I do think real estate has like a unique niche, and and I think your audience is a lot of real estate guys
Yeah.
too. And so
Yep.
real estate's different than like selling a widget sometimes. Sometimes you sell a widget, you get paid before you ever even have to bill for it. But in real estate, it's like you got to kind of front the cash, the risk, especially if you're not wholesaling. Even if
Mhm.
you are wholesaling, there's still a lot of expense. But I'll tell you something that's been really eye opening for me, and like I'm still working through this. The book helped with it a little bit too, but my mentor's been trying to beat it in my head because in October of last year, we stopped every single form of like outbound marketing, like
Hmm.
texting, cold calling. What did we do? RVMs, direct mail. Like we were doing all of these things, and the budget was fine. Like we were like 7,500. We'd get three, four, five deals a month, and we just weren't seeming to buy them like as deep as what we used to. And what I ended up doing was, and this was, I ended up stopping every single form of it like October 3rd or something of the year.
Hmm.
And I said, I'm going to go straight inbound with PPC only. Well, that was not smart to do at all. I should have kind of like handed that off a little bit slower, like dripped out all of that. But I
Yeah.
tend to just kind of either pull the rug immediately or kind of like change the direction like immediately. And man,
Hmm.
that just doesn't work out that well. But come January, so 3 months later, it finally started like clicking and humming because PPC took a minute to warm up, and
Hmm.
I was spending 7,500 a month in PPC, and we'd get a couple deals a month out of it, and we look at everything like an equity purchased. So because I do a lot of wrapping, and so it's like I can't count that equity today because I won't capture it for a long time,
Yeah.
right? And so we still try to look at it because you got like two forms of accounting, right? Cost and accrual, and so we try to look at it like that. And it was really interesting to see it like a $7,500 spend. I'd probably get 75,000, 100,000, maybe in equity captured per month. That's probably high. Let's go more like 75,000.
Hmm.
After reading the book and after my mentor kind of pushing me up and telling me there's so much safety in spending more in marketing. And I never understood that.
Hmm.
And I feel like now we jumped the marketing to 22,500. And now I feel like I actually see that because I only increased the marketing 12 grand, and now we capture 200, 300 grand in equity. And so if you look at the difference in the spreads, right, it's like, would you rather spend 7,500 and get 75,000, so you make 60 some thousand in equity there, or it's spending 25,000 a month, we capture 300, 200 grand in equity. So you got 175,000 to $275,000 equity spend. And so it's like, which one would you rather have
Hmm.
within that? And so now it's not always easy to just go to 25,000, right? Because like I don't have the money, I don't have the resources. And so it's a progression, but it's also like a mindset of doing it too. And so, man, that's really helped with what we're doing now.
Wow. That's so, and honestly, I think you're the first person that I've had on the show that's brought that up. That yeah, you need to get over that hurdle or that mental block of being okay with spending the money because it really is just a numbers game, and that's so it's an interesting quote. Like in fact, I think that's going to be the name of the show. There's so much safety in spending more money. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
really interesting. I probably shouldn't tell that to my wife. We're doing our
Yeah.
house remodel right now.
Yeah, dude. Dig
So
your own
hopefully she's
grave
not
there.
listening to that. There's no safety in that, babe. So anyways, no, that's super interesting. So I want to go back. You mentioned that you had all these different companies that you were kind of naming off. And so I'm curious, what was it about real estate that helped it to stick? Was it pretty quick that you realized, hey, this is going to work? Or did you have to kind of fail at that as well? And then eventually it started to click, down the road? Or how did that look?
Yeah, I mean, definitely had to. Definitely had to fail at it for quite a while. But I think it was just the. I don't think it was that I was super interested in it. I don't think it was that like, oh, I think I'll do well at it. I think it was just kind of like the next thing that I was heading towards
Mm.
at that point. Just had been trying and trying and trying and trying, and then honestly, I got into reading books when I was like 26 years old, I finally started reading like books for the
Mm-hmm.
first time. And then I think I kept seeing the word like real estate in there, like periodically, randomly, like built my wealth, did this, did that, did this, did that. And then I read the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, like a lot of people have. And then it was like, that's pretty cool. And then saw HGTV. And I think it was just this multitude of different things. And I was in medical sales, and a guy lived here in St. Louis, and he was in medical sales too. He sold for Stryker, I sold for Cardinal, and we were orthopedic reps. And I got introduced to him through a friend, and he was like, "You should check, this stuff out as well." And so just kind of started seeing things in different areas, and then got interested, got into a coaching program immediately. Our mutual friend,
Mm-hmm.
within that, was teaching people back then. He launched a program for vets, and he was taking on 10 vets, and I was in security forces as a
Mm.
civilian though, but he still let me in. And man, we just took it, screwed it up for 3 years trying to wholesale and flip. And man, and it was like I never could actually make the money. I kept pushing the profits down the road forever. And then I found creative finance, and then I was able to start holding correctly, getting the financing done correctly, because we buy a lot of sub two now. And
Mm.
so I've got 2 and 3. All I want is 2 and 3% debt now. Give me $1 billion at that debt, and we can do just fine with it. And yeah, he really changed my life. And then I've met other mentors since that have just had a profound impact on what I want to do, like in real estate. Because once it hits a certain point in here, it's just like, well, now, like, what actually fills your cup? Like, is it
Mm-hmm.
making more money? Probably not. um,
Yeah.
it's t-ball, it's church, it's faith, it's that stuff.
Yeah. Man, that's so interesting. Isn't it funny how the sharpening the saw concept, that Abraham Lincoln would talk about, where he's like, if I got to chop down a tree, give me several hours to sharpen the saw, then it'll take me 10 minutes to cut down the tree. And how often do we go about life just banging our heads with a dull axe at this tree, just going at it, and hacking away and just wasting all of our time and energy and resources. And then you get to that point where like, man, if I just would have stopped and actually like read a book, maybe start there, learn from people that have been before me, figure out how to do it. And then you did something else that was super smart. You got with a mentor who then obviously has done it before you, helps you out. I think that's one of the most underrated things out there is you always got to seek out learning from, coaches and mentors. And then, yeah, something else that was interesting about what you said there was, look, I tried the model that they were talking about with wholesaling and I just wasn't good at it. It wasn't for me. And I think a lot of people get discouraged way too easily, right? Like, I mean, some people quit after a month, 2 months. They're like, whatever. But I mean, you said 3 years, like that's how long it took. And then you found creative financing, which I want to get into because I think right now I was just at a meetup couple weeks ago and someone there's always that objection to like, and it's usually from the younger people like, well, what about us? We'll never be able to afford a home. We can never get homes. Look at the prices, and I'm like, oh man, like if you have that mindset, you're right. You're going
Yeah.
to be a renter forever and you'll never own real estate. But I can promise you there's enough education out there, way more than there ever was when I was around at that age. So just open up YouTube and start reading a book and like get into creative financing. And I promise you'll be surprised at what you find. So I'm curious, how did that work for you? Who was your mentor for creative financing and what was it that clicked for you?
Yeah, his name was Brad. He's out of Nashville, Tennessee. He's still coaching. He's unbelievable at what he does. I couldn't recommend, people to him more,
Cool.
for what he does, man.
Super cool.
What was the other part of that?
Yeah. So what was it about creative financing that clicked like for you? Like why I'm
Oh,
curious.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what resonated with you and why is that now working so well for you now?
Yeah. Well, I think it's because because some people crush it like wholesaling, and some
Yep.
people crush it flipping, and I just
Mm-hmm.
couldn't get it there. And I think it was because I wasn't good at it, or maybe I
Mm-hmm.
didn't like find the passion in it. With
Mm-hmm.
this, So I love like the cash flow game. And
Mm,
so with creative financing, it's I can acquire a property a specific way, and then I own or finance it or lease option it to somebody, and there's a delta in between there, and I collect the delta. And so what that basically means, like to people who don't know, is like so I'll take over somebody's mortgage at 3 or 4%, and I will then sell it to somebody who cannot get bank financing at 10%. We always do 10%, it's flat numbers, so we always do 10. And there is usually, 500 to $700 per door in net cash flow within that.
mm,
And I just enjoy it's slow, right? Because you can't run a business off a $700 cash flow growth per month. That doesn't
mhm,
really work. Not
mhm,
at this point anymore. But back then it did because I was the only one doing it. Today, we've got a team of six. They're all based here, they're all highly paid. So it just doesn't work at that point. But I've been doing it for 5 years now. And our goal is a $1,500 a month cash flow growth. And if you do that year over year over year over year, eventually that thing does kind of take on its own life. And so the interesting thing to me was within it, like, let's say my home mortgage is $2,200 a month. So I have to own or finance 6 homes before I can buy our house. We're
mm,
building a barn back here, and it's going to have my new office in it that's pretty good size and costs a chunk of money. And I couldn't build it until I've created it, till I created the monthly income. Same with my wife's car that people think's probably goofy that she has, or my truck. See,
mhm.
we don't pay for it, right? The people who have bought our homes pay for it. And I think that's what I've really enjoyed is that game of playing that.
Man. So yeah, you just described Rich Dad Poor Dad. The Rich Dad, for those of you that have not read it, which I'm sure you're living under a rock, because if you know anything about real estate, I'm sorry, but that's the purple Bible is what we call it. Anyone that gets in real estate has said that they have read that book, right? So if you're in real estate, I promise you've read that book, at least one page. And so in it though, it's that exact concept of debt is not a bad thing. Like you can actually make a lot of money off of debt. In fact, most wealthy people, like billionaires, for example, rarely own their homes outright. They still will leverage the bank because they understand the power of money. They understand that if the bank is going to offer me a note at 4% or 5%, I know that I can take that same money and I can make 10, 12, 18%, whatever they're making, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's just a leverage game, leverage, leverage, leverage. Like that's all it is. And so what you're doing is arbitrage. Like you
Yep.
are now realizing, like, okay, this is not all bad debt. In fact, if I want to buy something, I just got to figure out who is going to pay for my debt. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's such a, okay, let me ask you this. So along those lines, most people that get into creative financing and really resonate well with that are also into like whole life insurance policies, right? Where it's like be your own bank. Are you involved at all in the insurance side?
Yeah. No, not in the insurance side. I'm involved in a different way. There's some most people aren't going to know what this is, but it's called. This is why I mentioned to you the money is. And there's this group called a chairman's group within it, and we create something called a ROBS structure on the inside. And it uses solo 401ks to move money
Mm,
through, and it is a profound way to utilize things. It's judgment free, credit free, similar to a whole life insurance policy, and
hmm
it can compound much faster than a whole life policy can. I had a whole life for 5 years. And then when you start learning some of these other things that I never even knew dude, remotely existed or were allowed, and they really caught my eye. And so I've
Man.
pressed into those at this
So
point. But
you
I
guys
think that
leverage
I
solo
think those
401ks.
ones, yeah, yeah. And I got the IRAs for the kids and whatnot, but I like this thing called a Rob structure. That just
I've never heard of that. See, this is why I love that right there is the answer. That's why I learned something
yeah,
like this every single time where you're like, huh, tell me
yeah.
more. That sounds interesting. So yeah, tell me a little bit more. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard to go too in depth without like starting to draw that stuff
Yeah,
out and
don't worry
whatnot. But
about going in
it's
the weeds.
it's like the whole life insurance policies. They're sexy over time,
Yeah.
basically. You got to sit in the seat, let the time do it, which is the same for like anything, right?
Hmm.
Like real estate, you
Yeah.
know, because I always have these back and forths with what I want to do next and what my goals are. And like I'm heavy on the goals and writing them down every day. And it just does something to your subconscious mind. Like you don't have to know how to do it, your mind will take care of it. And
Hmm.
so if you just tell it to do it every day, and oh god, I forgot where I was going with that.
The Rob
That
structure.
I think that yes, so that's where it kind of has led me to this point is I fell into the Rob structure and the life insurance policies are just that infinite banky thing is cool. It's
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, that had a similar effect on my psyche as Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's the what's the big black book that is infinite baking. Whoever wrote that book, I can't
Is it
remember his name.
George Antonio or George Antone?
That's it.
He had a whole series. Um,
Yes,
yeah,
yes, that's him.
sick book. Like just
Yeah, it's
like you
another
can't
one, and
almost
it's
not buy it. Like
right.
when you get it, you're gonna message your life insurance guy. Like it's
Yeah, you're
hard
like,
not to.
what the heck? Why? And that's what's so infuriating is because you think about what you're taught in school. And I mean, all this stuff, nothing is ever mentioned. And you can't go on social media. You can't find this stuff. Maybe there's some influencers out there. Most of them are crap. You know, most of them you got to worry about because there's some other
Yeah,
ulterior
there's
motive and they're trying to get rich off
yeah
of you.
yeah
But I don't know. It's like you have these conversations like this, and you're like, wait, what's that? And then you dig in a little bit more, and you go down this rabbit hole, and all of a sudden you're like, everything I've learned is completely wrong, and I'm so mad about this. Like, why did I not know this? 20 years ago, when I could have compounded interest and really had an impact. And now I'm 40, and it's like, shoot, we
yeah.
got to catch up. But
This is what we struggle with. We don't know whether to send our kids to school or homeschool them or private school them, and it's like I don't know what to do, man. Like hopefully they just have fun. I guess
yeah,
I'm still undecided. Do they get this portfolio? Do we just give it away and work with them and let them build their own world that
yeah,
they want to live in? It's like how do you where do we
there's
go here, man? It's just different than like when we grew up. If you're
it
40 and I'm
is.
35, I mean we grew up in the same
Yep,
world.
yep. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, and I mean, all of this stuff is just self-taught. Really, most people they just and it's not like I have learned any of this stuff. It's that I've known people that know people that know people. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, that's how. And that's why I love masterminds so much is because you have these hallway conversations that just
Yeah.
trigger something in your brain, and as long as you're just curious enough to be open. That's the other thing. I find a lot of people that are not successful with money and wealth management generally have that common thread of they're not really curious people. They're not really interested in hearing if maybe there's a better way of doing things than the way you've been trying it. And you got to just be open because you got to be able to admit that everything you may have learned could be wrong. Kind of like Rich Dad Poor Dad. It was like it wasn't bad. There was just a better way. But it was
Yeah.
a total mind shift, and
Yeah.
it's an interesting world. But that's really cool. I'd love to, at some point talk a little bit more about the 401k because you can put away in a solo and 401k like on a yearly basis, to avoid taxes, those kind of things. About roughly how much are you able to put away into that? Is it
See,
like 80?
this is where it's misconcepted. It's unlimited.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
where it becomes incredibly appealing as your wealth grows over time. Is it's not necessarily even a way to hide money. We get taxed on 21%, and
Yeah.
so
Got it.
but the way that it can be leveraged and utilized is unmatched with what can
Yeah.
happen within it. And there's things you can figure out to do through private equity and stuff. As we grow our networks and stuff, we have private equity opportunities where you can make 100x on your investment in 5 years. And for a lot of people to hear that, it's just like, no, can't happen. And
Right.
and maybe it doesn't sometimes. But
Mm-hmm.
I know what the returns I expect on my money in my real estate business, and
Man.
and they would frustrate people um,
Mm-hmm.
that have to go to work all day and every day, and like why is it so easy? And it wasn't for the longest time, but now it's just you have different expectations of it.
Yeah. And I mean, that really is the whole point of the show being called Rush to Fail is it's like you've got to be willing to just put yourself out there, to be okay with failure. Like, hurry up, get through it. Like what you did, where you were like, hey, by the time you're only 36 years old right now, and you've gone through dozens of companies, and most people maybe have one, two, three companies that they've tried. And usually after maybe one or two that fail, they're probably going to a W-2 job and just saying, look, it's not for me. I can't be a business owner. And it was just like, no, you just didn't get the right thing. And so, like, the fact that you were willing to just like continually stumble, you're still stumbling. Obviously it's not perfect, but you're stumbling in the right direction now, where it's starting to like actually compound, and
Yeah.
I've noticed that with like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and those guys. Like, they hire people specifically because they know that they're risk takers and they're willing to push and question. And that's like Steve Jobs' biggest thing, is question everything, like, and Elon Musk is the same way. It's like, why do we do it this way? Like, just because I told you to do that doesn't mean you should do that. Like, that's what I think is the best way. But they think like an engineer, where it's like, could be wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Yeah.
question me, like, tell me why I'm doing this, because I could be wrong.
Yeah.
And so
I
they
think it's
appreciate people.
it's really interesting what you say, and it reminds me of this. So I had to do this big raise for one of our parks, and I had to raise 1.6 million in like 30 days, and I'd never even attempted something like that. Um,
11.6, did you say?
no, 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 no. One point one
Okay, I
point
was like,
six
holy
one point
smokes.
six.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
still a lot of
which
money,
was
but yeah,
still like
that's a
way
lot of
out
money.
of my world. And this is
Yeah.
it's an equity play, right? So you ain't
Yeah.
getting it back
Mm.
within this. Like, hey, you want to come play? Like, good deal. Here's a pro forma. Like, but
Yeah. Yeah.
math makes sense. Feasibility study, all of that good stuff. And I was just kind of mad about having to do it. I was like, man, like, I do not want to do this raise, but the deal looks phenomenal and all of this stuff. And I was kind of like complaining to my mentor.
Hmm.
And he's like, Trav, he's like, look, if you don't want to do it, then don't do it. But the magic, and here's what he said that like hit me. And this is back to like your audience, not maybe we don't want to put ourselves out there and we don't want to mess up or we don't want to fail. And because I still have those moments, obviously, this is the example I'm giving you. And he
Hmm.
told me the magic that you want is in the actions that you're not taking.
Hmm.
And I was just like, oh, I wasn't ready. I'm not ready to hear that, but I know you're right. And it
Hmm.
was just, and I don't even think that was the exact wording on how he said it, but it was just very profound to me when he said that. Like,
Hmm.
what you want to happen is in the things you're not doing.
Hmm.
And I was just like, you're right. I know how to
Hmm.
get it. I just don't want to do it. And so
Yeah.
it's like, we don't want to make that a cold call. Like, because I did medical sales, right? We don't want to go to that doctor's office and and call on it. But that's how you get the business. You don't want to
Yep.
call that seller. But that's how you buy the house. And so
It's so true. Yeah, like even in sales, like you can really boil it down. It really, and I always tell our sales reps, like, this is a numbers game, and it really is this simple. Like, and I swear to you, if you want to make $500,000 this year, you can do that year one. I promise you, you can. You're gonna have to do these things, and when I tell you what you're gonna have to do to hit that number, you might look at me and think I'm crazy, but I'm telling you, you can do it. It's just, you got to be willing to put in this type of effort level to get
mm-hmm.
that reward. And I just think so many people, they want to live, like a millionaire, but they don't want to put in the work like a millionaire, like they don't see what goes into, getting to that point and all the failures that happen to get to that point, and so I love that, because you're right. Like, there's so many things that you really could do whatever you want, to an extent, I guess. I can't just like snap my fingers and I want to be, Elon Musk. And so we have obviously some limits to our capabilities, but yeah, I think like within our realm, like there's so many things that are possible, but it does take, what I've found at least, is I need the right mentor. I need someone that's been there before. And as long as they can show me, hey, if you do this, then this will happen. For me, that's just what's clicked, is it's like so much easier rather than me trying to figure it out on my own. I don't know. Is that kind of how you've been?
It's the only way. So I give talks, what seems to be more often than I'm like comfortable with at these meetings or masterminds. And it's always like I started off with like, faith, Christian, hunter, and I've done nothing but stand on the shoulders of giants like my entire career. And so it's like, now I coach, right? So I coach creative financing now at this point because it's like I can only buy so many houses per year, but you can teach all these other people to help people stop from foreclosure. And so it's always odd to me, but this is how we brought up. If my dad knew what people, either what I've had to pay coaches or what even my students pay me today to do it, he would probably be blown away and mad about
Mm-hmm.
like, why would you ever pay somebody that amount of money to do
Mm-hmm.
that? And it's like, well, because I get 10 or 100x the return that year. And that's my goal for that. Right? Like if I wanted a better marriage, then I would do marriage counseling and marriage conferences, which we go to. Of course, I want a better marriage. And so it's like so many people are so good at some things. So why not just learn from them?
Man, what an awesome example. And yeah, that makes me think about the first mastermind that we joined. It was 7-figure flipping, and at the time I didn't
Yeah.
know what a mastermind was. I didn't even know that they existed. It was still kind of like almost underground, And it was like you got to know someone and
Yeah.
whatever. So somehow
Yeah.
we like stumbled on this group of people, and they told us they meet together and they basically spill all their secrets, and they open
Yeah.
up their business and they tell you what they're doing. And I'm like, that's crazy. No one would ever do that. Like there's some underlying whatever. So then we found out who to contact, and we had a phone call with my business partner at the time, and I still remember vividly that conversation with them. It was maybe, I don't know, 30 minutes long, and we're talking about what they do and what their program is like. And we get to the end of it, and he's like, okay, so it's 30 grand,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a one time. You got to pay all of it up front, and there's no refunds,
Yeah. Hope you like
and
it.
you get access for a year. And I was like, we looked at each other and we're like, is this dude out of his mind? Did he just say $30,000? Like I was thinking, I don't know. Going into, I knew it was going to be expensive. I just was honestly blown away. This was in 2000, I think 18.
Yeah.
I was like, there's no way. But we sat on it for a minute and we're like, dude, are we going to do this? And I'm shocked, to be truthful with you. Like I still can't believe we actually pulled the trigger on it. But we
Mm-hmm.
did. We cut the check for 30 grand, which is so much money at that time. I was like, there's no way.
Yeah.
And in the first, I don't know, 2 hours probably, I was like, yeah, we just made all that back, and then we're probably gonna like 10x it. And we did. Like we honestly, I can look back at that and say easily 10x that within probably 6 to 8 months,
Yeah.
and it doesn't make sense. But man, that was a leap of faith. That was like the hardest check I've had to write, honestly.
Yeah.
But
And I bet you wrote bigger ones since because now you know that they're worth it.
oh yeah, now it's just
And
part of the balance sheet. It's just an expected expense, because I think now I understand. Okay, like I think the rule of thumb is like 10% of what you make or something like that. But I don't know what the number should be, or everyone will say I'm sure different. But I
yeah.
mean, you better be spending something on coaches and masterminds. If you're not and you're stuck, there you go.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
honestly, just make sure you find the right, people.
Just Google it. Yeah. There'll
That's
be
yeah,
something
right.
bad. If
Go on
it's a
Instagram.
scam, you'll catch it. So
It'll be fine.
yeah.
Just fail your way into it. You'll
Uh,
figure it out. Man, this has been fun. Okay, so I'm actually typically, when at the end of the podcast I'll have 3 questions that are generally the same. With you, I'm going to mix it up a little bit more,
okay.
because I think we've gone over a couple of them actually already. So what I'm curious about, because you were like, hey, what am I going to do with my kids? Like, how should I, allocate resources, when the time comes for us to pass this on to our kids. So along those lines, I'm actually curious. Yeah. So what do you kind of have, I guess, like an end goal? Do you guys have like, we want to get to this point, and then the next chapter will be this? I don't know if you and your wife have talked about that. I'm just curious if you've put some thought into like what the next chapter might be.
Yeah. And are you talking about dollar figure wise, or are you talking about
It
like
very
there's a
well could
pretty
be like maybe you guys are like, hey, we want to hit this milestone and so that we're self-sufficient or whatever the case may be, so that we can then free up our time to do something else. Or maybe you'll double down and just say, I want to do more business or whatever. I'm just curious, because
yeah.
I think people struggle when they get to that point where they're like, my business is going well, I'm making good money. Now what?
Yeah.
What's that next step? So I'm curious, like for you, have you put some thought into that?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, we still have we I fall into that monthly. Like, what am I doing the right thing? Do I still want to keep doing it? And like my wife and I's goals, like it's funny because we still have our personal goals and like our financial goals. And the new thing that we have, and it is such I don't even know how to define it, but I had her come to this like networking event with me here locally. And, our goal now is that when we get to heaven, how do we make sure that he says, hey, good job
Mm,
down there? And that's such a, right? I mean, that's a humongous statement on
mm,
how does that like actually happen. But I think that's what we're trying to figure out now. It's like, how do we do
man.
a good job with our children? I think we're done with our own children. Now we're looking, once they get out of like being a baby and I can hang out with my wife for a little bit with just her and
Hmm.
I and stuff, then I think it's going to lead to some pretty neat things, I think, at
Mm,
that point. So tough to say exactly on that, man. I mean, I've got revenue goals and whatnot, but I feel like that's like the one that, you know, the one that I want to try to hit.
man, how cool is that? Like, if you wanted to really just sum it up in a sentence, yeah. Like, how do I want to be received? Yeah, when I pass the veil and I go on to the other side, what's that conversation going to look like? And hopefully, the first words are like, "Man, nice work, Trav."
Yeah, dude, and you know what? I'll add one more thing to it. So I've got like 10 local guys here, and they're all buddies I went to school with. We're all around the same age, and they've got great jobs, and they're starting to get into real estate, and they're grinding and working and doing all of this. And we met the other night, and one of them's a pharmacist, beautiful home. And we were talking about like, hey man, what's your goals? Like, what's your goals? And there's three of them. What's your goals? And they went around and they were like, well, I want to take care of my kid, like all great things. And then one of my closest friends, and the this is the compliment that like I feel like I want to be known for, is
Mm,
he was telling me, he's like, I just love the amount of time that you have to spend it with your family and the way that you treat people.
mm,
And he's like, and I've never seen your wife not. So I've always opened the car door for my wife. And he's like, I just enjoy the way I want to treat people the way you do. And I don't know if that has to do with real estate or not. And
mm.
I was just like, hell yeah.
Hmm.
That's that's the coolest goal I've ever heard. I never said anything like that. And
Mm.
that's the most profound thing that somebody could ever tell me.
Man, such a cool compliment. And it goes to show, man, you just wonder how many people are watching, especially your kids, obviously, like what you're doing, the things you don't realize that they're picking up on, just like simple act of opening up the door for your wife. Like it's those
Yeah.
things that actually mattered. And yet so many people are thinking, well, no, they just want, a nice house and all the things or whatever. And it's like, nah, I think they really just want to be. I think the biggest thing is I don't have a great memory. Like I don't remember a lot of events. My wife has to be the one that I have to ask. And, when I tell stories, I just
Yeah.
kind of make them sound a lot cooler than they really, I'm sure, were,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
I can
dude.
just
Like, just
embellish.
like we all do. Like,
Yeah. Like, and I genuinely don't really
uh,
remember the details. I'm like, this is how I remember it.
yeah.
But what I do remember though with people is how they made me feel.
Mm.
And so that's about what it boils down to for me is like, I like that guy or I like that girl because I just feel good around them, and that's about it. Like, and it doesn't come down to probably more than that. And so, yeah, it's cool to see that impact, obviously, with your community, that you're having. And so,
Mm.
yeah, hopefully we can, take our talents and not hide them and we'll do what you're doing and obviously share. Hey, this is working for me. This is what I'm doing. And that's a big part of why we started doing the turnkey thing is it's like, I mean, shoot, I don't got enough money to buy all these homes. So, I mean, there's plenty to go around, you know, so if anyone else wants a couple, here you go, you know, and it just kind of snowballs from there and, you know, see where it goes. But man, that's cool. A great answer though. Cool. Well, I guess a couple things. If people want to find you, it sounds like you do some coaching and, you know, teach people on creative financing and stuff. Is that something where you're still taking on clients or?
Yeah. I try to take on 3 to maybe 4 people a month. Mine's kind of like hands-on. You know, we still do the online training, but it is, you know, I bring them here to my house for a full day and we do like an immersion with them and whatnot. I still think my mentor is probably the guy who taught me is probably still the best in the business in my opinion. But I honestly, it helps like fill my cup of like, I like it. I enjoy it. You can make some money off of it, but it's kind of more, it's fun to get to do it too. And so I've had,
I mean, it's cool. You get paid.
Guys.
Yeah. You get paid to do what you enjoy doing. And that's the ultimate. That's what everyone wants to be at. So to be able to find you, how do they find you?
Yes. So I'll send you the links. Is that cool? If I send you
totally, we'll put the links in there. Are you on social media a lot? Do people reach out to you that way or?
Yeah. I mean, Facebook's probably like the best way. I'll put my calendar link in there if somebody does want to, you know, talk about the apprenticeship and coaching and whatnot. I'm happy to do that. But yeah, man, I'm just Travis Oglesby. I'm on Facebook. It's me holding my daughter, and then I've got my family in the background, and so just normal dude on there. But yeah, I got like a branding person that is putting out stuff all the time for our coaching and stuff.
Yeah, more people need to be able to find you. So yeah, we'll put those links in the podcast, obviously, and let everyone, you know, jump on there. And so again, like if anyone is interested in getting into creative finance, which I would highly recommend, it's something that I've done a little bit of, and probably like you, it's like I'm not the best at it. I know enough to be dangerous, but it's not like that's my only thing that I'm, you know, doing right now. And that's the thing is real estate, you can make money in 100 different ways. And so you just got to find one that is good for you. And so if maybe people out there have not been successful with flipping homes or wholesaling, whatever the case may be, like Travis, hey, there's another option. Let's maybe explore it. Could be the right fit, maybe not. But I will tell you that once you get into that circle of people, you'll be blown away by the intelligence level. In fact, I went to just a funny, I guess, last thing I'll mention about that was I went to a note conference one time. And these are all people that are buying notes, you know, and that world I had no clue about. Right. And I had a buddy of mine that was in that. And I went to it and I was a fish out of water. There's a bunch of just nerds, man. They're all freaking brilliant. You know, like, they're way smarter,
man. Room full of engineers is what it is.
There's one person in that room that did not belong, and it was very obvious. And I'm just sitting there like, what in the world is this? And it was a whole nother world. I've been in real estate for 15 years, did not know that world existed, but that's all they do. They buy and sell notes, like secondary notes and it's a whole thing, right? Like you can go down another go down that hole and it's crazy. But there's a whole nother world out there that if you want to learn more about it, I would obviously recommend Travis to at least give you that introduction, see if it's a good fit or not. So yeah. Awesome. Well, Travis, thanks so much for coming on the show. This is a blast.
Yeah, happy to do it, man. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
I want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to this podcast. It's the best part of my week. I love learning from others' failures, and let's be honest, failures are way more enjoyable when you're not the one experiencing them in the moment. If you or someone you know has a story or experience to share, we would love to have you on the show. And please do not forget to like and share this podcast with anyone you feel will get value from the experiences shared on this show. Until the next show, remember to fail fast and fail often. Thanks for listening to the Rush to Fail podcast.